everyone, and welcome to our Fall Flair knit along. It is a 4-week knit along online and in-store every Friday at 5 p.m. here on Facebook, and it is featuring the designs of Jennifer Beale, a Canadian designer. We gave you 3 project choices this time, which is always nice to have variety. Project number 1 is featured on my left, fully completed. This took me about 2 weeks to work through all the different steps and to block it and get it up on the mannequin. So this is called Marquise, and it is top-down knitting with a cap sleeve and saddle shoulders done in lace work, and there is some ferrule across the bodice or chest, and there is some I-cord edging along the neckline, A-line, which we love, and details of the lace work at the side. I'll bring it up closer to the camera so you can have a nice inspection of it. And then project number 2 is Trepacy Cardigan. The links will be below, of course, for you to look at the Ravelry pages. And Trepacy is worked in sport or DK weight, 3.75 millimeter needles, and it features very interesting construction, also from the top down with saddle shoulders, and all seamless. Both of these are seamless, and this has her special pocket feature, very interesting pockets, and lace cables and reverse stocking stitch. And then project number 3, very popular choice, ladies. This is called Lameline Cardigan, and it is also featuring seamless construction. It is worked with a provisional cast on from above the color work, and one piece will be one front, half the back, and one sleeve, and then you complete the mirror image for the opposite front, back, and sleeve, and then join them together down the center back. This is worked in fingering weight yarn, and it is on 3, 3 1/4, and 3.75 millimeter needles. So it's never too late to join along. We have all the videos for reference in our events page. They'll stay there for at least 30 days, and then we move them up to YouTube. So even if you're starting it in the middle of winter when the snow is flying around outside the window, then you've got the references there. And today I have a special question and answer section. So Jennifer, the designer, has kindly answered some of your questions, and I will read you the questions and the answers because, of course, she is on the East Coast and the time difference makes it difficult for her to coincide with our live broadcast. And the other thing that we do during the knit along is weekly incentive trivia questions, usually pertaining to something to do with the origins of the designs or the designer. And we have a ballot box here, so each week we just choose a random winner for the incentive question, and then you get an extra ballot in the draw bucket. So for participating in the knit along, you get a ballot in, and for being chosen as the incentive trivia question winner, you get another ballot. And at the end of the 4 weeks, we will draw a grand prize winner. Next week I will be showing you, I promise, the actual gift basket that you are vying for. It's always something full of goodies. So our yarn choices for project number 1 and project number 2, it's the same weight of yarn. This one was knit in the Muskoka Yarn Goddess Lusso, which is half merino, half bamboo sourced viscose. So you get that flattering sheen and that soft drape. It is, I would say it's very, very soft. It's a non-itchy composition. The other option is a pure wool. This one is 100% British Blueface Leicester wool. It's also very bouncy and soft. And then project number 2 takes the same yarns. Project number 3 is fingering weight. So here are some of the combinations that you've been choosing. I'll try to keep posting pictures as your progress pics come in. And that is a superwash merino or a composition of a wool with nylon. So I think the picture I posted this week from somebody's progress pic was this for the main and this for the contrast. But you will be seeing more color progress pics, all the different colors that you've been choosing. They are always inspiring, and I know some of you have decided to do, since last week, the second and the third project choice. So you have lots of things going on your needles. And welcome to our new knit-alongers who've just joined, Karen and Shauna. It's always nice to have new knitters joining our group. So today I'm going to give you a small demonstration on one of the techniques featured in this cardigan. And I will put the links down below for other techniques that you'll have to be familiar with. And I'm going to show you this up close before I forget some of the details of the design. Here she comes. Now we have a naked mannequin. Okay, so this one starts with a saddle shoulder strip. Then you're putting your stitches on a spare circular or holder, and this border will be finished at the very end. So here we're working from the neckline out and incorporating different types of lace work and I-cord. Then I-cord stitches at this point and this point are put on miniature holders, and then you repeat the same saddle shoulder for the opposite shoulder. And then you're going to be casting on with a knitted cast on to join the two pieces together to make the back and the front neckline complete. Now the knitted cast on tends to be a little bit tight, and some of the previous knitters of this design mentioned that the neckline is quite small. I don't find it small at all, but that's because I was aware of the problem, not the problem, just the tighter neckline. So I was very careful that when I finished the I-cord border around the front and back neckline, that I did that quite loosely and also worked the I-cord bind off into every stitch along the neck. So I wasn't skipping any. I'll remind you about that as we get further along. And here you can see the raglan shaping coming down to the underarm. Once the underarm is complete, then you're going to go onto a larger circular needle. The pattern will instruct you where to change, and you'll be working the color work chart for a section of, I think it's about 20 rows or less, not too long. So that's worked in the round, of course. And because it's on a larger needle, it will prevent you from tightening up your stranding work, which is sometimes an issue that we knitters have. And especially because this is across the, well, it's below the chest line, but we don't want to be pulling in, we want to have lots of stretch. And after you finish your color work, then you're going to start this beautiful A-line side work. So that's where you get the extra stitches as you work down through the charts. You're going to be increasing extra stitches, and then it makes a pretty little scallop finish at the bottom. And of course the garter stitch gives it a nice weighty hem, and you're ready to cast off. So there's not really a lot to this design. It may look more complicated than it really is. And it's completely reversible. The back and front neckline are at the same height, so you can wear it whichever way you like. So those are all the components for marquees, which is project number 1. And we had 2 of our knit-alongers in our in-store knit-along group today, who were pretty much finished the saddle shoulders. They had connected the necklines, and they had picked up, and they were starting to work down into the body. So I also want to mention that when you're joining a new skein of yarn on project number 1 or 2, Because there's a lot of plain stocking stitch, be sure to make your yarn ends join at the side edges. You don't want to join in the middle of the stocking stitch and have kind of a bumpy area where you have to sew in the ends. It would be very noticeable even with the blocking. So just determine how much yarn you have left over. Can you make it to the next side edge where you have some relief stitch work, and that's easy to hide your ends in at the back, the wrong side, or you're going to have to rip back what you've done and go to the other side edge. So that's pretty important on project number 1 and also project number 2, because there is a lot of plain stocking stitch which encompasses the whole side of the front around to the back. There are no side seams at all on this cardigan. And that will bring me into the demonstration. So on project number 2, you will be using German short rows, and that's of course for that pretty shoulder edge, the curved shoulder, and then there will be a 3 needle bind off instead of casting off and sewing a seam. So it's very neat and not bulky there. So German short rows are what are suggested. I'll put the link in the event page for that, so you have a instructional video to view at your leisure. Project number 3, 2 of the techniques you'll be getting into shortly are Elizabeth Zimmerman side seam, which is a faux side seam. So I've got some practice yarn here. I'm going to show you that in front of the camera. And also the Sunday short rows. So Sunday short rows are very similar to the German short rows, except you don't have to bring your yarn up and over the needle. If you find that is an exercise in frustration, then give the Sunday short rows a chance and see if you like that one better. You will require removable locking stitch markers. So you want a stitch marker that's almost like a little safety pin that opens and closes. That will be put on your short row working yarn every time you turn to go back on the wrong side or the right side. So I will put a link below that will show you that technique as well. So those are all the little areas that you might have questions about for this week until next week. And if you have questions, if you've gone further and you have questions about the next techniques or the next steps, feel free to post them in the comments or send a message or put on the events page, and I'll be sure to answer it directly. And maybe we'll just go to the trivia question first to give you some time to ponder an answer while I'm doing the demo. Okay, so this trivia question is pertaining to the designer Jennifer's home area, which is Newfoundland, as we know. Which flavor of Lay's potato chips is available only in Newfoundland? So there's a very specific flavor which we cannot get anywhere across the country, and it's a long drive to the East Coast to pick them up or have them mailed or have friends ship them to us. But if you're a fan of this flavor, then you'll know where they are available. So while you're posting your guess in the comments below, I'm going to bring my little demo piece up. And this is for Elizabeth Zimmerman side seam technique, and it is featured, if you're doing project number 3, you're going to be using this technique as soon as you get to the underarm. So that's about 11 inches up from your provisional cast on to the underarm, depending on what size you're doing. You will do the technique before you continue on to the shoulders. So this is just done to give the illusion of having a side seam, so it has a bit more structure on your garment. So the pattern will tell you to knit across the row a certain number of stitches, which will bring you right to dead center below the underarm, and then you'll be instructed to drop a stitch. Sounds scary, but we've all done it accidentally, so why not do it on purpose? And depending on your yarn, you're going to have to help that stitch drop 11 inches all the way to the bottom until you have one loop above your provisional cast on. And make sure to have a crochet hook handy. Size is not that important as long as it's not bigger than your actual knitting needle. So try to stay close to your knitting needle size. Put that little loop at the base onto your hook, and then you're going to find the ladders or the bars in sequence, and you're going to go under the first 2 bars. Turn your hook slightly to the left and pull through the loop that's on your hook. Very much like doing a chain stitch in crochet, except it's in the middle of your knitting. Now the next step is picking up just a single bar in sequence and through the crochet stitch. So 2 come through together and then only 1 bar. So under 2, pull them through. Under 1, pull it through. You can make up a little rhyme. And that's going to continue all the way up to your underarm where your stitches are still on the needle. And then it goes back onto your left needle and it's ready for the next instruction. So you can see there's a very subtle raised effect. That's the faux side seam. So when the cardigan is worn, it gives it a little bit of a crease there instead of being completely rounded. Always fun to learn a new technique, isn't it? Okay, so let's get on to questions that you sent in for Jennifer. There's only 5 questions, won't take too long. Her answers are really good, and she really enjoyed answering the questions, and she wants to answer more, so just keep sending in the questions. I think I have some on the back from one of the knit-alongers today. Question number 1. How did your career path change direction from oceanography and atmospheric science to knitwear design? It was very unplanned. Our little guy Basil had 2 open heart surgeries at 2 days old and then at 7 months old. So I couldn't bring myself to go back to work and put him in daycare after my maternity leave. I was going to get into tech editing for knitting since I love math, and when I told my husband, he gave me a weird look and said, "Why don't you design instead?" So that's how it all started. Question number 2. Do you begin your design process with the yarn as inspiration, or do you choose the yarn after the design has been formulated in your mind? Answer. Mostly I have the formulated ideas on hold and then wait for the perfect yarn to pop onto my radar. But I also wait until it feels like the right time to take on the project. Question number 3. Are you a fan of top-down or bottom-up knitting? So in our knit-along we are featuring 2 top-down and 1 bottom-up project. Answer. If it's a traditional construction, bottom-up all the way. The stitches just look nicer in this direction as well as the decreases. If it's a non-traditional construction, then any direction that makes the design look as it is intended to look. I'm a big fan of bottom-up too. I don't know how you feel. Maybe you want to post in the comments. Do you prefer bottom-up knitting or top-down? Question number 4. How many wicks, works in progress, can you handle at one time? Well, we know most of us have an average of 2 to 3. And Jennifer says, right now I have 14 design wicks in various stages. But normal circumstances, yes, usually only 4. There's a reason for the 14, and I'm trying hard to stay zen about having so many. I also love knitting other designers' patterns to stay grounded, and for the days when I don't want to worry about something not working out or not having to calculate aspects of the design. There are also 7 of these kicking around. They've been on my needles forever, and I still love them equally, so I know each will get finished one day. Question number 5. Are you a self-taught knitter and do you recall your first project? I recall first learning to knit as a kid, but it never stuck. I picked it up back in my 20s when Ravelry started up and when I moved to St. John's for the second and final time. There's just something about living in this city and knitting. Great answers from Jennifer. I hope that gives you a little bit more background as to her design aesthetics and just to feel more connected. As you're knitting, you'll have a little bit more thought process that connects you to how she translates her patterns to what we're knitting. Okay, so that is everything for this week, and I hope you're making great progress on your chosen patterns. And I will be back next week at 5 p.m. on Friday, and that'll be week 3. I'll show the prize basket, we'll have another incentive question, and some more techniques to go through. Look for all the links on the event page because I think they are really helpful. It's like having a knitting instructor peering over your shoulder. Have a great weekend.